Good morning. Whether you are joining us here in person or on Zoom, welcome to First Universalist Society in Franklin. I'm Mary Dennis. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm chair of the worship committee. And it is so good to be with you all this morning. I especially welcome anyone who is visiting with us today. Please take a moment to sign our guest book in the foyer or our virtual guest book online. We would love to get to know you better. All are invited to gather after the service for snacks and coffee in the Fellowship Cafe or stay a while to chat on Zoom. This morning's service, titled Why Legislation Matters for folks in the LGBTQIA+ community, will be led by the FUSF Welcoming Congregation Initiative team. This is a lay-led service, and our interim minister, Reverend Beverly Waring, will be back in the pulpit next Sunday. The Welcoming Congregation Initiative team, I'll call it WCI, is a program that was launched over 35 years ago by the Unitarian Universalist Association for congregations that want to take intentional steps to be more welcoming and inclusive of people of all sexual orientations and gender identities. Being welcoming means striving for radical inclusion and creating spaces that honor every part of our identities, backgrounds, and experiences. The FUSF-WCI team, established in 1993, meets regularly and welcomes anyone who wants to be involved. They are co-chairs Margie Shahana, Deb Prudhomme, and members Sarah Allegretti, Pam Bellino Rivera, Connie Dunn, Sandy Fellows, Catherine Mayo, and Evelyn Rossing, and you will hear more from them in a little bit. And now, let us join our hearts and minds together as we gather for worship. Wherever you are, wherever you come from, wherever you find yourself on your life's journey, whatever your pronouns, whomever you love, you are welcome here. You belong here.
Good morning. I am Margie Shahana. My pronouns are she, her. Closer? We can do it. Is that better? Awesome. I'm Margie Shahana, pronoun she, her, if you didn't hear that piece. I stand before you today as a proud gay woman. And I am grateful you have joined us to reflect on the legislative victories our community has faced, along with the unprecedented number of bills attacking the LGBTQIA+ rights in recent years, especially our transgender youth. We have chosen to sandwich this service with the entirety of Holly Near's 1979 classic, We Are a Gentle Angry People, split in two parts. This song never fails to bring tears to my eyes with its reminders of how wonderfully loving, strong, and persistently brave the LGBTQIA+ community has always been. When I first sang it at numerous Pride and AIDS epidemic marches and vigils back in the 1980s and 90s, We were literally singing for our community's lives as the AIDS epidemic was spiraling out of control. By the time legislation prioritized enough spending on medical research that a treatment was found in 1996, so 16 years after the epidemic started, we had lost 1 in 15 of our gay men to AIDS, and 10% of our gay men aged 25 to 44. It breaks my heart that we are still literally singing for our community's lives through this song today. Now, it is mostly our trans community that is suffering, and especially its youth. And this does not just impact the lives of random strangers out there in the world. Please take a moment to think of the LGBTQIA folks of all ages who might be sitting in this room this very moment. The legislation to protect the fundamental needs and rights of our community matters tremendously. As we join our hearts and minds in worship, the Welcoming Congregation team invites you to consider how you can renew your commitment to supporting LGBTQIA+ community members in your life and in the world through your involvement in various organizations, by speaking your values in the ballot box, and in communication with your government representatives. We invite you to join us in prayers and hopes for a better tomorrow where a song like "We Are a Gentle, Angry People" is no longer needed for any community of minority status. And may it be so. We will now sing verses 1 to 3 of "We Are a Gentle, Angry People." That is number 107 in the gray hymnal, and updated words for it for later on are, what's that? 170. 170. Awesome. Well, thank you. We'll change that on with Dave for later. Duly noted. The words are also in the order of service, and there are some updated lyrics for later on. But please rise as you are called.
Each Sunday morning, we share a centering ritual with Unitarian Universalists around the world, the lighting of a chalice. As Julia and Griselda lights our chalice, hear these words. We gather this morning as one community, a community unified by common ideals, love, justice, diversity, freedom, mutual care, and equity. Yet look around. Look at the faces of those around you. Each face represents an individual. Every one of us with our own story, needs, strengths, and faults. We light our chalice today, honoring our common connection and also the uniqueness that lives within each of us. Please remain seated and join together in singing the unison affirmation, which can be found inside the cover of the gray hymnal.
Hello, good morning. My name is Sarah Allegretti. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm honored to be your Acting Director of Religious Education. Later in this service, at the beginning of the reflections, there will be some adult content. Most children and teens will be in RE class with me and the other teachers, but if your child might stay here, you can check in with Catherine Mayo in the foyer right after the time for all ages. She will share about the content and help make a plan that feels good for your family. Any children and youth who aren't already in the front are welcome to come down now. So today I remembered my Wonder Box. If you were here, I think it was last week, I forgot it. But I have it today. Let me get it. It is quite full. Can I have a volunteer come up to show us what's inside? Magnolia, come on up. Go. Just lift the lid right off. You might need two hands. It's kind of, yep. Do you want to take them out? All right. I'll take the lid back. You keep the flags. And can you hand them out to anyone who wants to hold one? And I have some bonus ones up here. These ones didn't fit in the box. Zoe, can you hand these out? Thank you. All right. So in a moment, we're going to get to test out our flags, and then I will tell some U.S. history. So what we're going to do is we'll start with our flags in our laps, and before you lift up your flag, you're going to make sure it has plenty of space to move around. And then when I sign like this, you will lift your flag and wave it. If you do not have a flag, you can join me in doing an ASL applause. Okay, almost all of them. Zoe, you have two. Yeah, you can sit back down. Thank you so much, Magnolia. Thank you, Zoe. All right, so let's test them out. Are you ready? And we'll test out our hands too to make sure we know how to do an ASL surprise. Ready? Yay! All right, and we'll put them back down. October is LGBTQIA+ History Month. So I'm going to share some U.S. history, a very quick story, and we will use our flags to celebrate the progress for rights of the LGBTQIA+ community. So to start, the indigenous people who have lived on and cared for this land for thousands and thousands of years before this land became known as the United States have a culture that embraces people of varying genders and sexualities, known as Two-Spirit people. While different tribes have varying cultures, there are some commonalities about Two-Spirit people. In many tribes, Two-Spirit people have the role of healers, shamans, ceremonial leaders, and even chiefs. Hey. People mostly from Europe started to move to this land in the 1600s and formed colonies. They brought with them Puritan and Christian norms, which at the time valued marriage between a man and a woman only. During the Civil War, there were women who served secretly as men, but the term transgender didn't exist yet. Throughout the 1800s and into the 1900s, many states made laws against gay and lesbian relationships. Some people were even fired from their jobs because they were gay. Fast forward, and in June of 1970, the US had its first pride marches in New York City, Los Angeles, and Chicago. Thousands of people showed up and demanded equal rights. Also in 1970, the Unitarian Universalists committed to full equality for LGBTQ people. Yay! Massachusetts was the first state to legally allow same-sex marriages in 2003. It's a favorite. Marriage equality became part of the U.S. law in June 2015. This granted same-sex couples in all 50 states the right to marriage. I don't even have to tell you when to raise your flags, you know. In 2020, a law passed that protects lesbian, gay, and transgender people's jobs. I like how you're sharing a flag. That's so sweet. In June 2023, the Equity Act was passed. This gives more protection to LGBTQIA+ people so that they are not treated differently based on who they love or their gender identity. The Welcoming Congregation Initiative Committee here at FUSF works hard to make sure LGBTQIA+ folks feel accepted, safe, and welcome here, with services like this one and other events throughout the year, which we all get to be a part of. Yay! As we sing our children to religious ed, I invite you to reflect on how much progress has been made in your lifetime. The lyrics for the song are in the order of service. Printed copies are given to newcomers, and the digital version is on our website at FUSF. Magnolia and Julia, since you have your hands open, do you mind collecting the flags for me? Thank you. Catherine Mayo will be in the foyer for any adults who want to check in with her. Thank you so much.
morning. My name is Evelyn Rossing. My pronouns are she, her. I am a member of your Welcoming Congregation Initiative team. Today's meditation is A Blessing for Queer Youth of Faith by Reverend Kathy Ryan. Bless you for who you are right now, right here. Bless you in your queerness, your gender fabulousness, your questioning, wondering, exploring, declaring. Bless you in the words you create and evolve and claim for yourself. May you relish your divinity as you dismantle binaries and create beautiful worlds of infinite possibilities. May those of us who are not queer respect you, learn from you, and show up for you as you need. Bless you in your youth, your brilliance, your ideas, your curiosity, your incredible leadership right now, let alone what is to come. May you be fortified in the face of adultism, and may you inhabit the fullness of your being. May those of us who are not youth respect you, learn from you, and show up for you as you need. Bless you in your faith, your precious connection with the sacred tradition, community, belief, and action that guides your life and holds you through the storms and celebrations of life. May your faith sustain you when your faith tradition honors you and when it harms you. May those who hold faiths that judge you come to know how very sacred and perfect you are. May those of us from all sorts of faith traditions respect you, learn from you, and show up for you as you need. May all of us, queer and straight, trans and cis, young, younger, old, and elder, faithful and faith allergic, bless you as your full, beautiful, queer, young, sacred self. Bless you as you. Know that you are enough right now, right here, and you are ever evolving, growing, deepening as your imperfectly perfect self. May we bless all queer youth of faith, all queer youth, all queer and trans and questioning people, all youth on our collective journey towards liberation. May you be blessed with the glitter of joy, dances of liberation, bricks of safety, and the nourishment of radical love.
Good morning. I'm Sandy Fellows, pronouns she and her. And this is about Did You Know? Did you know that as of March of 2024, there were more than 470 state bills introduced or active that attacked the equality, dignity, free speech, and expression of LGBTQ plus people, with many directly targeting transgender people. Some bills would criminalize the very existence of, and I didn't know this term, I wonder if anybody else has heard this, TGE, transgender and gender expansive people. But as of September 5th, the ACLU website tells us that they are now tracking 530 anti-LGBTQIA bills. This is from the ACLU. In the last few years, states have advanced a record number of bills that attack LGBTQ rights, especially transgender youth. While more states every year work to pass laws to protect LGBTQ people, state legislatures are still advancing bills that target transgender people, limit local protections, and allow the use of religion to discriminate. Even before the recent escalation, the American Medical Association declared violence against transgender people an epidemic. Among the many ramifications of all this, here are some statistics from the Samaritans, from Statista, and from the Trevor Project. The Trevor Project, by the way, is the National Queer Youth Suicide Prevention Organization. Last year in June, our congregation donated an incredibly generous $875 in our Pride Month plate giveaway. Now the statistics. It is estimated that 82% of trans adults have considered suicide, and 40% have actually attempted it. Suicide rates of LGBTQIA plus teens is 4 times that of their peers. It is estimated that more than 1.8 million LGBTQ plus young people, ages 13 to 24, seriously consider suicide each year in the U.S. And over half of this number is trans and non-binary youth. This boils down to at least one LGBTQ plus young person attempting suicide in the U.S. every 45 seconds. Yes, every 45 seconds. Doing the math, please join me for a moment to think about the 80 or so suicide attempts by young people that will occur just during the course of this service, and to send collective prayers that they all receive the loving intervention they need. And though these facts and statistics are horrific in their own right, it is clear the demonization and scapegoating of TGE people, if not defeated, will invite subsequent attacks against other marginalized groups. Our UU values compel us to be actively compassionate and defend the rights and dignity of all people. We are clear and unapologetic. Our LGBTQIA+ siblings are sacred, whole, and divine. As UUs, we understand that the full expression of the diversity of gender and sexuality is a gift. This is a moment of crisis for our TGE siblings. This impacts us close to home here in Massachusetts as well, where there is room for concern and celebration regarding legislation. There are currently 2 curriculum censorship bills advancing through the system. But on the plus side, we celebrated a huge victory this summer as the Mass Parentage Act to protect the LGBTQ+ families and children born through surrogacy and assisted reproduction was passed. We are a gentle, angry, loving people, singing for our lives and for your life. Dave Bouchard and Deb Prudhomme will now share their personal experiences.
Morning. I'm Dave Bouchard. My pronouns are he, him. I'm married to Emil Belisle, who's also a he, him. We started coming to FUSF in 1994 and became members around 1995. We're residents of Woonsocket, Rhode Island. Here's a bit of our story and why we believe legislation matters. And throughout this, I will replace the LGBTQIA++ handle with the phrase queer people. I hope no one's offended, but it keeps me from tripping over my tongue as I read through this. So Emil and I met in October of 1988. By the summer of 89, we decided to merge our households. Not an uncommon event in many people's lives, but for us it meant finding a home that would accommodate both me and him, my 2 sons, his son, and every other weekend his 2 daughters. Not a small order, but we did find a place. Our kids are all in the same age range. Back then it was between 7 and 10 years old, and 2 of them were even in the same classes in school. They all seemed to get along pretty well for the most part, so even with some bumps in the road, things were working out okay. Our immediate focus was, like anyone else, finances, family well-being, hoping the neighbors weren't a bunch of homophobes, and hoping that school principals and Cub Scout troop wouldn't realize that the boys came from a household headed by 2 men. And the reason for that was that just one bad comment from any one of them could result in trouble for our family, maybe even loss of custody. It was the late 80s, and it was not unheard of for a judge to deny custody to a parent who was queer, just for being queer. There were few legal protections, so we tried keeping things in order, tried to make the kids understand that they needed to be careful while talking about our family, and reminded them that some people could be cruel. Of course, they were too young to fully understand, but we managed to get through it with few altercations. Back then, Emil and I didn't really set our sights on being married. That seemed a bridge too far. We were grateful that we had an apartment with a landlord that accepted us, that we had employers that, if you kept your mouth shut about your home life, they wouldn't fire you, and that we didn't get beat up coming out of a club on a Saturday night out. Thinking back, I believe that the concept of gay people marrying never crossed our minds, but people in some circles were talking about it, and their voices were getting louder. We were only listening with half an ear. Our worries were with the immediate day-to-day concerns. It was a struggle, as many of you know from your own situations. Housing, food, clothing, transportation, school, and so on. Plus, we also had to maintain double health insurance plans for ourselves and our kids, file separate tax returns, file a lot of extra legal papers to protect our family. But that's just the way it was. There was nothing you could do about it. As time went on, we became more involved with various queer organizations, GLAAD, HRC, a gay parents group out of Providence, and Interweave, which was right here in this church. All were talking about equal rights for queer people, even the right to marry. The more we listened, the more it sounded like a possibility. Marriage was a right that most straight people took for granted. It was a right that bestowed upon the two people being married a litany of other rights that were unavailable to partners who were not able to marry, and just by signing a single piece of paper. For example, joint tax filing, Social Security and pension survivor benefits, inheritance benefits, health insurance beneficiaries, hospital visitation rights, medical decisions, sponsoring a partner for immigration. And there are a lot more, and individual states have different rules, but you get the gist of all these rights that were there. Queer couples were being denied all of these rights. And if you think back, there was also a federal act in place called DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act, signed by a Democrat president, by the way, which was Bill Clinton. That act specifically prohibited queer people from marrying and obtaining those rights. And why were people denied? Why were queer people denied? Mostly due to three things: prejudice, fear, and especially religion. But regarding religion, there was no requirement in any state laws that stated that a marriage was strictly a religious arrangement. Marriage was basically a contract between two people that offered tremendous benefits. A marriage ceremony, whether performed in a religious venue or a courthouse or in a tent on the beach at sunrise, was valid. And it didn't matter whether it was conducted by a minister, a government official, or your cousin Stanley, it was still a valid marriage. And it conferred that whole list of rights and privileges to married people, but only if the married people were of opposite genders. For same-sex partners, that contract was denied. In 2004, 2004, marriage equality became the law of the state of Massachusetts, the first state to codify the right of gay and lesbian people to marry their same-sex partners. Emil and I were happy about this victory, but he and I wanted to marry in our own state. We mentioned this to an organizer of MERI, which was Marriage Equality Rhode Island, after a meeting that we attended. She asked us to consider that Rhode Island's laws on marriages performed in other states were such that those out-of-state marriages had to be respected in Rhode Island. They were transportable across state lines. She said that the more out-of-state marriages that Rhode Island had to accept, the better the statistics and the stronger the possibility of passing equal marriage legislation in Rhode Island. So in 2007, on this very spot where I stand now, the Reverend Carol Rosine pronounced that Emil and I were married according to the laws and the state of Massachusetts. It was great, and it was also the first time I'd ever been to a gay wedding. So during that time, between 2004 and the time we were married, several other states also recognized marriage rights. Other states opted for domestic partnerships. The dominoes were falling. In 2013, Section 3 of the Defense of Marriage Act, which prevented the federal government from recognizing same-sex marriages, was declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. The reason for that decision was that DOMA denied same-sex couples equal liberty as guaranteed by the Fifth Amendment. Also in 2013, it became legal for us to be married in our own state. We were now married filing jointly and on all three of our tax returns. Now, both Emil and I could have the same health insurance plan. Laws regarding survivors' benefits applied to us, and a lot of other rights that we didn't have before, mostly in the area of finances. And as we all know, finances are just about everything. Then, in 2015, the Supreme Court's decision in Obergefell versus Hodges brought marriage equality rights to the federal level, which in turn was forced down to the states. The decision here is that the fundamental right to marry is guaranteed to same-sex couples by both the Due Process Clause and the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. Finally, SCOTUS had made a decision in our favor. Queer people had the right to marry anywhere in the United States. Granted, it was a 5-4 decision, but nonetheless, it was in our favor. The hindrances to queer people marrying were found to be unconstitutional. It was now settled law. Of course, the opposition forces were, and still are, persistent. They want to take away these rights, put an end to same-sex marriages, but how could they? The Supreme Court established a precedent. It's the law of the land. This is settled law. Then 2022 comes along. And what lesson did we learn about settled law in 2022? Roe versus Wade was settled law. Every one of those justices currently on the court said during their confirmation hearings that they recognized and respected settled law. But did that stop them from overturning a 50-year-old precedent? No, it did not. Roe had never been codified into law. There was no legislation passed by Congress, signed by the president, that made abortion access a federal law. Roe was toast. So in light of that, what exactly does the term settled law mean? It really means that the court has made a determination, a decision, by the majority of justices on a legal issue. It sets a precedent, but lo and behold, there's nothing that prevents the court from overturning that decision at a later time, and that's now evident to everybody. What would carry more weight is legislation. Federal law passed by Congress, signed by the president. And by the way, for queer people, it's more than just the right to marry that needs to be legally protected by law. Queer people still lack federal protections against discrimination in employment, housing, public accommodations, education, federally funded programs, credit, and even jury service. Currently, there are only a patchwork of protections in these areas, depending on individual states' laws. The nation's civil rights laws do not necessarily apply to us because they lack the specific references to queer people in their language. Fortunately for us, there have been and still are attempts being made to pass non-discrimination law on federal level. The Equality Act is one of them. The Equality Act would provide consistent and explicit anti-discrimination protection to queer people by amending the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The Equality Act was reintroduced into the House of Representatives in June of 2023. Sadly, it has not been acted on as of this time. The act was not new. It was first proposed in the 114th Congress, and you should realize that we are now rapidly spiraling towards the end of the 118th Congress. So to wrap it up, federal legislation which codifies constitutionally protected rights for all people is important. It can be challenged, but if it's grounded in and supported by the due process and equal protection clauses, it's more likely to remain as law. What Emil and I have today with our right as gay men to be married to each other and all the legal benefits that marriage bestows could one day be stripped from us on the whims of an extremist Supreme Court. All queer people are in the same boat. Our rights today are subject to the same unjust, unfounded beliefs that withheld them since back in 1996 when DOMA was signed into law. Prejudice, fear, and religion. So legislation matters. It's not absolute, but it carries more weight and is possibly more certain than relying strictly on decisions by the Supreme Court, even when it's considered settled law. So make it a law, passed by Congress and signed by the President. Thank you.
Well, good morning. My name is Deborah Prudhomme. I use the pronoun she, her, and I am also a member of the Welcoming Congregation Initiative Team, WCI. I'd like to share my story with you, so I ask you to open your mind and heart. And do you remember your first crush? Was it in middle school or high school? That person who made your heart skip a beat? You'd hope to pass them in the hall, and you'd probably even take the long way to get to your next class. For most of us here, that might seem like a lifetime ago. I had my first crush a lifetime ago. It was ninth grade, band class. I was a clarinet player. This school year, I loved band class. A symphony of joy would beat from my heart as I entered the room. And not because of the teacher, and not because I wanted to sharpen my clarinet skills. It was to be in the same room as my first crush, one of the trumpet players. From my vantage point, the hot throb holding that golden horn sat way in the back row. I had to turn my head to the left and let my eyes bypass the sea of flute and clarinet players until my eyes landed on the athletic blonde that beckoned my attention. I was 100% distracted by my crush. Her name was Kathy. She was taller than me, had a beautiful smile, and long blonde hair that had a slight wave to it. I was infatuated, and I swear she was illuminated by a spotlight that only shined down on her. Yeah, it was that real. And back then, in the late 1970s, I didn't have thoughts of being gay. I didn't know the word even existed. But I did know I was never late for band, and I kicked myself for not playing the trumpet. Later that year, I had another crush on a girl. Her name's Roxanne. And just being in close proximity to her elevated my mood and brought more harmonies to my heart. And it was around this time when I realized that there was something very wrong with me. I remember thinking, this is not normal. I'm not supposed to like girls. And my few friends would talk and giggle about the boys they liked. So I went along with their stories just to fit in, and I agreed with who they thought was cute. And with this acting role, my words and my heart were in big conflict. And being enamored with Kathy just felt so wrong, confusing, and so shameful. I am convinced that I suppressed those early ninth grade feelings of infatuation. At a later point in the ninth grade, Michael came along and pursued me until I gave in. Other girls thought he was cute, so I figured I was pretty lucky. And we became high school sweethearts. But with Mike, I don't recall that beautiful orchestra playing love songs. Rather, it was more relatable to a song you may know titled 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. It wasn't there. And by 11th grade, I said goodbye to Mike. I felt smothered. He always wanted to be together. And then I met John in 12th grade. And I think that's my phone, sorry. Yeah, sorry, I forgot. As you guessed, John and I didn't last. I found that I never really enjoyed relationships. I was feeling lost, and then my lost went to found right around 1985 when I joined the Navy. A few days before I left for boot camp, I remember my mom giving me a stern warning about potential lesbians in the Navy. This is true. I actually remember saying, "Mom, if any lesbian tried anything with me, I'd punch them." Boy, was I wrong. Fast forward to my first assignment on the beautiful island of Bermuda. I had a new friend, Joyce. We'd go to the clubs together, the beach. She taught me how to ride her motorcycle, and we had a blast exploring the island. Then, after a night out, she admitted to me that she was gay and had a crush on me. And I was shocked. It was that moment my mom warned me about. A million things passed through my 19-year-old brain, and I was confused. Should I ask her to leave? Should I pretend I didn't hear her? Should I punch her? And to this day, I don't remember how that night ended. But the next morning, while at work, Joyce very discreetly apologized for what she said, because being gay in the Navy back in the 80s was not accepted, tolerated, or even legal. It would bring quick disciplinary action, the possibility of jail time. There was legislation forbidding this type of relationship. And for the most part, I am a rule follower. So there was no way I would be involved with Joyce. About a week later, Joyce and I started dating. Our relationship came with a high level of secrecy, though. We couldn't hold hands, we couldn't show affection, or announce our relationship like other straight couples could. And NCIS back then wasn't a TV show. Yes, it was the Navy's Criminal Investigative Service, and it was something to be very aware of as a gay service member. Less than a year after Joyce and I were together, the Navy authorities conducted a witch hunt. The result of other military members, our co-workers, reporting suspicions of homosexual relationships. Our very small circle of friends quickly tried to alert one another as base security searched rooms and homes of people they suspected were gay. Back then, with no cell phones or texting, I'm not sure how we so quickly notified one another. I imagine it was pure fear. My barracks room was not searched. I slipped under the radar this time. But others did have their rooms searched and their homes searched. One friend quickly burned some love letters in her bathtub before the security arrived at her door. She relayed the story to us afterwards on how she was questioned by the investigators and about the burned papers in her bathtub. I'm happy to report that we all escaped that witch hunt and no one was charged for the atrocity of love. And this was the reality of being gay in the military: secrecy, fear, the possibility of imprisonment. On other military installations, people weren't so lucky. Many service members spent years in jail and were discharged for indecent acts or conduct unbecoming an officer. Legislation strictly prohibited same-sex relationships, and we were living in secrecy. And it was Dwight D. Eisenhower who signed the executive order in 1953 banning homosexuals from serving in the government. Eisenhower's ban remained in place until 1993, when Bill Clinton signed the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy. I decided to leave the Navy after 5 years. From hiding my middle school crush to discrimination in the military, it became increasingly taxing to hide who I was. And even as a civilian, I hid my personal life. I didn't come out to my family until 1997, when I lost my father. I was missing the military, though, and decided, I shouldn't have, but decided to join the Air Force Reserves. And during this time, the attacks of 9/11 occurred. I was stationed at Westover Air Force Base near Springfield, and our company began ramping up training, preparing legal documents. No official orders existed. We were simply getting ready for the possibility of a deployment, and we needed to have our affairs in order. We were reviewing a mountainous pile of documents, and one page we had to designate our next of kin. And I toiled over what name to put here, and because I wanted to write my partner's name. Upon voicing my concern about who qualifies as a next of kin, I was informed that I was not allowed to put my partner's name there. My conversation with this admin person was like an intense game of ping pong, high stakes ping pong. I'd explain my next of kin relationship. He shot back that I couldn't list her name. I served up my concerns, and he spiked back with a quick, "That's not allowed." And during our competition, I tossed back. So if I die, you're telling me my partner would not be notified and not be entitled to anything? And he, with a final spike, confirmed my question, and it was game over. Disheartened and frustrated, I walked away with my paperwork incomplete. Would this inequality ever come to an end? And after much deliberation, I wrote a letter to my commanding officer and resigned from the Air Force. It was a difficult decision, and sometimes I reflect back and wish things could have played out differently. I enjoyed serving in the military, but could no longer dedicate myself to an organization that didn't accept or support me. And through all this secrecy, the fear of being myself, and suppressing my earliest feelings in high school, I lived in silence for a long time. And as a matter of fact, this is the first time I speak so openly and freely about who I am. Today, acceptance of LGBTQIA is a bit better than in the past, but there really is still a lot of work to do. Our community needs allies, advocates, and strong voices because intolerance, inequality, and injustice are still very much alive in our world. We cannot relive the dark, discriminatory days of Eisenhower, and together we can do more. Thinking back to my high school years, I can't believe I had suppressed those feelings so deeply within my core. Those memories of my first high school crush, they didn't resurface until years after my first relationship. And I remember when they bubbled up. It was like that light bulb moment. And it was at that point when I finally understood what Lady Gaga so famously sang out, like, I was born this way. Coincidentally, I met my trumpet-playing crush, Kathy, in a gay club many years later. I was shocked and smiled inside. We chatted for a while, but I never revealed to her how much I enjoyed band class. Feeling comfortable and accepting who I am took a long time. I'll never forget those feelings and emotions I battled with for years, the shame, the confusion, suppression, secrecy, fear. Love should come with joy and freedom and pride. And today I'm proud to stand here and share my story and happy to let go of all that confusion and shame. I do need to go back to one part of my story, though. I broke my promise to my mom, and I never did punch any lesbians in the Navy. And I also should point out that my mom loves and accepts me and always has. And my mom is here today. Hi, Mom. Aw. In honor of all our first crushes, and whether you were born straight, gay, bi, trans, or questioning, I'd like to encourage you all to be an ally for our continued battle on equality. I implore you to contribute to causes, volunteer at a Pride event, or reach out to a friend or family member so they know that you stand with them. Because legislation does matter. Every human on our beautiful planet must have the same rights to love openly and freely, to follow their heart, to live their authentic self, and to have the courage to explore that first crush. And I am forever grateful for your attention and kindness. Thank you.
Hello. I'm Pam Bellino Rivera. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a member of the Welcoming Congregation Initiative as well. And as you know, October is LGBTQIA+ History Month. It's a month celebrating communities' achievements, and there are many organizations and advocates for our rights, and their critical work is ongoing. In order to continue the important mission of our all people having the same equal rights, we invite you to make a contribution today to the plate giveaway. Your gift will be donated to the Out Metro West. Each month, they run over a dozen youth meetings. This organization mission is to build communities with the LGBTQIA+ youth and can thrive by creating compassionate, supportive spaces, and it's a worthwhile cause. So to contribute, you can drop a donation in the collection plate today or drop in the mail later. Please be sure to clearly label your donation. You can give electronically to go to the FUSF website. Either click on Give or Breeze on the home page, then log in or sign in to give through either Tithely or Breeze and type in plate giveaway. So thank you for your generosity.
So we are now going to sing the verses 4 through 6 of We Are a Gentle and Angry People, and that's, again, 170 in the Gray Hymnal. Please note that Holly Near has updated the lyrics for verse 5 to be more inclusive. Instead of gay and straight together, we'll now sing all in this together. If you have, the words are, again, also on the backside of your order of service. You can find them. So please rise as you are able, and we'll sing.
Sing
our benediction. May all beings dwell in spacious equanimity, free from fear and ignorance. May they abound in well-being and peace. As James in the Bible encourages us, what good is it if we earnestly desire for those words to be reality, but do not act? We are singing for our lives. We are singing for your life. Let us be moved to do more than sing. May we find in our hearts the momentum for a blessed and active forward movement. May it be so.
Please join us in singing a farewell song. Carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again. Sing it through twice.
We extinguish the flame in our chalice, but not what it represents. The light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment. Those we carry in our hearts and share them out in the world. Our worship has ended. Our service continues on. My friends, go with love and go in peace.